Shabbat Shalom. For the last several weeks, our Torah has been building up to a culminating moment, the inauguration of the newly constructed tabernacle and the moment when God's presence will come to rest among the children of Israel. Last week, Aaron and his 4 sons were elevated to their priestly office by Moses in the presence of the people. The ceremony, lasting several days, was filled with new ritual. The tabernacle and its contents were consecrated by Moses, who then anointed Aaron and his 4 sons with blood and oil, consecrating them as well. The 8th day, Shmini, dawns as we open this week's Parsha. Moses gives specific instructions to Aaron for a sacrifice that will take place before the entire community because, our Torah says, "Today the Lord will appear to you." The exacting ceremony proceeds, and Moses and Aaron bless the people. The presence of the Lord appears before them all in the form of fire, which comes out to consume the offering they've left at the altar. Following this unprecedented moment, Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's elder sons, take their fire pans and make an incense offering to the Lord, offering, as our Torah says, alien fire, which had not been commanded of them. Instantly they are killed, immolated by fire from the Lord. Even at this distance, we are shocked. The commentaries are filled with reasons why. Perhaps Nadav and Avihu were drunk. Perhaps they did not consult Moses or Aaron. Or even worse, perhaps they were eager to take the leaders' roles for themselves. Perhaps they were filled with excessive pride, or they entered the Holy of Holies, or even, as the Sifra, the Midrash on Leviticus notes, the 2 young priests were simply overwhelmed by joy on seeing the initial fiery mark of God's presence and only sought to offer more love by bringing their own fire. The possible reasons go on and on. But the commentators are also uneasy. The Baal HaTurim questions the Torah's stated reason for the disaster, that the offering brought by Nadav and Avihu had simply not been commanded of them. He notes, they had not been warned to refrain from this, nor commanded not to bring it. Isn't all punishment preceded by a warning? This was, after all, the very first time the tabernacle had been used. Wouldn't God, the merciful one, be more patient with a first-time error? It would be reassuring, in a way, if there were logical reasons for the deaths of these 2 young priests. We all seem to need reasons. If we know the reason for something, we can learn a lesson and avoid a future mistake. But there's a sort of hollowness in why, in the rush to fill with reasons. Does any of them really matter? In the end, there seems to be no reason that totally fits these tragic deaths. They come out of nowhere, appear cruel and random. The same cruelty and randomness seem to hover around us today. The coronavirus that is sweeping the globe gives no reasons. There are plenty of stories of people, especially healthcare workers, who, of course, washed their hands, of course, wore all the protective gear, and still fell victim to this plague. Nurses and physicians at the peak of their careers demonstrating the greatest love by inserting themselves into danger to help others are felled seemingly at random. It's also true for us lay people. Some of us get it, others don't. Some are afflicted with nearly imperceptible cases, others with very acute ones. We try to find scientific reasons so that we can learn lessons. Sometimes we can. This one played ball cheek by jowl with a bunch of other teens. That one had an underlying heart condition. But for many, the attack is simply cruel and random. After the deaths of Nadav and Avihu, Aaron and his 2 remaining sons were told in no uncertain terms by Moses that they were not permitted to mourn. Torah says, "You may not bare your heads nor rend your clothes. It's as if Moses is saying, "You have jobs to do which are not yet finished. You are consecrated priests and leaders of the people. You may not turn away from the duties you are charged with to focus on your personal grief." Aaron's response? Vayidom Aharon. Aaron was silent. At times, says Rabbi David Wolpe, silence cuts deeper than any words. It can pound and howl. He quotes Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk, who says, "The cry one holds back is the most powerful of all." This powerful, inaudible cry was Aaron's response to the death of his elder sons. Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch of Dvar notes that Aaron was silent in the way of inanimate existence. Sometimes, he says, a person has to be on the inanimate level. Thus, you do not feel the pain that another is causing you, nor do you question God's actions, just as the inanimate soil feels no pain. Perhaps that was Aaron's way of getting through that moment, turning himself inanimate so as to feel nothing. His inaudible scream and seemingly inanimate surface coexisting simultaneously, just to be able to continue on, to finish his sacred task. There would be time for mourning, but it had to be postponed. The people needed him to be their priest now, to carry out his duty. The emotional cost of bottling up sorrow is so steep. I imagine that healthcare workers feel that high cost every day, and yet they move on so that they can help the next patient live. In much the same way, Aaron and his remaining sons pushed through, though they must have been filled with sorrow and even fear for their own lives. As the terrible deaths of Nadav and Avihu had just demonstrated, they too could make a mistake, run afoul of rules that were yet unknown, and be randomly struck down. Moses offers Aaron a nechemta, a consolation, a word of hope. He says, "Your kinsmen, all the house of Israel, shall bewail the burning that the Lord has wrought." Though Aaron cannot grieve, cannot leave off his work, the community will step up and grieve for him. It doesn't extinguish Aaron's suffering, but knowing that a whole community stood behind him, holding his pain, intently aware, perhaps as never before, the sacrifices made by others on their behalf, perhaps the community helped alleviate Aaron's pain. Small acts of kindness can change worlds in hellish moments. These are days in which we all battle with our grief and our fear, days in which our normal lives and rituals have been upended, yet we draw strength from the way in which our community has stepped up to hold us. We have witnessed many acts of kindness, both large and small, since we began this virtual lockdown a few weeks ago. We have seen how this TBZ community, energized by our leadership, has come close to help one another in our most ordinary and most extraordinary needs, in our joys and in our sorrows, using means we never thought to use before. We come together for morning services, enabling both the joy of prayer and offering those in mourning a way to say Kaddish in community. We buy groceries and offer rides. We gift each other jokes and share music. It's as though, having been forced apart, we understand as never before the deep need we have for each other, how the faces of those we care for light up our world even when we see them only on Zoom. Community and connection are blessings today, just as they were in the time of Aaron, and support us just as they supported him. This coronavirus-induced discontinuity is giving us a chance to think differently, to make serious change. It has brought with it opportunities we haven't taken up in a long while, learning more deeply about the loved ones we live with simply by spending more time with them, taking an afternoon walk with a partner or child, renewing a friendship with someone we haven't spoken to in a long while, taking the time to be more thoughtful about our level of consumption in this fragile world. Jonathan Haidt, a social psychologist and author, recently said of this moment, "This is a time for us to reflect and choose a better story." Right now, stories are being rewritten all around us, nationally and individually, and we all get a chance to do some of that rewriting. One day, hopefully soon, we will leave our homes again. What will we take away from this time which has been so difficult, even hellish for many of us? Andre Malraux said, "You have not come back from hell with empty hands." What will we bring with us as we leave this period? How will we choose to rewrite our stories? How will we shape our future in light of the moment that we're living now? Shabbat Shalom.